Hey guys, Mrhappy here, and today I want to do a video about cleaning up your UI, changing it around, all the different ways that you can sort of customize the game to your own feeling. Now, while this episode is going to primarily focus on the PC version of the game, I will be doing a PS3 version soon enough. So don't worry guys, I'm going to make sure to figure everything out for the PS3 before I do a video about it, because I don't want to be figuring it out mid-video, although I have a feeling even when it comes to the UI changes in this video, I'll still be going, oh, I didn't know I could do that, because there's a lot of options that people just sort of don't notice because it's easy to get lost in all of the menus and the options that you have. So let's start with the basics. As you can see, this is my current UI. It's somewhat different from the UI that you're used to seeing maybe in my other videos. I mean, for the most part, it's the same. I have the chat box in the bottom left. I focused most of my hotbars towards the center. I kind of squeezed them together so that they didn't take up as much space. I have my HP, MP, and whatnot in the bottom. I have all of my other menus in the bottom right. I have my mini map in the top right. But there are a few changes that I made, and I am going to go over some of the tricks that you can use to help customize it a little bit. So first, I want to go over the UI itself, and to do that, we're going to use the Hud Layout. Now, the Hud Layout is a menu option that allows you to move things around to your own, whatever word you're looking for. It just allows you to move things around. Now, there's a lot of things that you can do on this menu, and first and most important thing you'll notice is a lot of things are stacked. There's actually a default place for a lot of these hotbars, and most of them aren't there on my screen. You're gonna have to really try and figure out if you want to even use them or enable them, just because you can use up so much space on your screen. If you actually decide to use all this stuff, you can use up so much of your screen that it can just get so completely cluttered. You can see how cluttered it can get in some of my previous videos. So let's go over what can you really do with all these things. I mean, it's self-explanatory, right? I don't need to explain that you can actually left click something and move the hotbar, and I know on the PlayStation version it's not as easy to do it that way. You actually have to go through you have to go through an additional menu. Really, you have to go through this menu right here to select your layout. But that's pretty self-explanatory. But what can you do? What can you do to make it look nicer? Now, bunching things together is one way, as long as they're bunched together in a neat, concise way. And one thing a lot of people seem to be curious about is, can you actually lock anything to all these grids? Because as you can see in the HUD layout menu, there's grids everywhere. You'd expect that there'd be an option to sort of lock them, right? Well, there actually is. As you can see here, I'm just free moving around this. No big deal, right? If you hold shift, it can actually lock to certain parts of the bar. Now, I've had a hard time getting a consistent sort of feel with this. It seems more often it just wants to lock to specific distances from the previous one. So in order for you to really lock to all the bars, it needs to be the right size. But as you can see, by holding shift, you can actually cause it to lock to the bars, which can make lining up your bars a lot easier and a lot more precise. So that's my first big hint. If you want all of your things to be sort of lined up perfectly, I highly recommend you just left click something, hold shift, and drag it around. As you can see, it's dragging around and locking to the bars instead of being free drag like this. As soon as you hold shift, bam, locked. Now you can hold shift and go crazy like this, but at least the whole time it's staying locked to things. This is free moving, and this is locked. So free moving, locked. See how I can drag the mouse and it'll take a while before it actually drags? There you go. So now that I've beaten that point into the ground, what else can you actually do in this menu? Because most of the UI changing doesn't actually happen in the movement menu. But there is one more thing you can do here. Now, this is an option that I remember them announcing and that a lot of people sort of overlooked, and I overlooked it too until a later point when I remember that it was there, and that you can actually scale the size of the UI here. So in order to scale the size of the UI, you simply have to highlight the piece that you want to scale, and you just press Control plus Home. As you can see here, it just made my target bar a lot smaller. And I'm actually going to leave it like that. I think I like my target bar being a little bit smaller because mine currently takes up a bit too much space. So that's a really simple thing you can do. Like, I have my duty list hidden, but in case I could make it bigger or smaller. As you can see, I already had it as the default small size. And you can do this with pretty much anything on your screen. Anything that you can select here, you can do it with. But this isn't the only place you can do it. So Other than that, these hotbars and things, you really need to learn how to move them around yourself, but we're going to go into a bunch of other UI options in a little bit. So while we're on the subject of the control home thing, you can actually do that with menus like this, ones that you just drag around on the default game. You just have to have them highlighted and press control home, and as you can see, you can change them between one of 3 sizes. In case you're wondering why we don't just have sort of a slider to tell us the size of the screens, they said they are implementing this at a later time. For now, 80%, 100%, and 120% size are the go-to ways to change it. So changing some of your other things from here doesn't really seem to be possible. Like, for example, I can't, nothing here. So this can drag itself, so the map itself won't work, and then the mini map, you can't, when you click it, it just brings up the other map, so you can't really do that from here. So you really have, it's really just these sort of menus that come up in the middle of the game like this. Like, this is huge. I don't know what I was doing with this. There we go. That's much better. I'm not that blind. I can actually see this for the most part, sort of. Maybe not. So now that you know you can do that with the control home, you know that you can move around the HUD layout like that. There's probably a few other things that you're wondering here. One is probably about my chat log. Now, as some of you have seen before, I have actually had my chat log up top like this, and as you can see, that's how you do it. You just drag a tab other than the initial tab, and you just drag it and put it anywhere. I'm actually going to have to block off my free company chat right there, so you're going to have seen a black circle when I do that example, so don't worry, or a black square, whatever you want to call it. As for the font, you have, you know, your chat options here. Nothing too fancy. Font size, really simple. Name display, you can change that, and name display is something that you're probably going to want to leave. As is. As a joke, I put initials for everyone, and it was just chaos trying to figure out who anyone was. Surname and maybe first name and last name will be okay. Surname and forename. But other than that, I don't see many people changing the name display option very often, unless they're always with the same 7 people and they all have different jobs all the time and things like that. But that's too much technicality. So as you can see here, now we're already in character configuration, which was the next place I actually needed to go. Character configuration has a lot of interesting options. One of them, and I'm not going to go too deep into this since I am talking about the PC version, is that you can actually change between the gamepad and the mouse mode. And as you can see, they do have 2 completely separate UIs, 2 completely separate UI options, because things that, like my duty list is back, for example, when I switch to gamepad mode. It's just something I haven't played around with yet on the PC version, but we'll be going into that more when I talk about the PS3 version, because theoretically, you should be able to make at least some of the changes on the PS3 that replicate the ones on the PC, but they're not nearly as self-explanatory as they are at the PC. So when I do my PS3 video, we'll go over the gamepad controls a lot more in depth. So as you can see here, we have character configuration. This is where pretty much the rest of your UI customization is going to happen. I mean, you have some basic things like camera settings and movement settings and things like that, but you also have target settings and certain display options available here. For example, target display settings, display target ring, display target lines, display aggro lines. Now, those of you who haven't played Final Fantasy XII might not be aware, but I have all of those shown. So if I walk up to an enemy, as you can see, it has a ring below him. Now, it also shows the aggro lines right there, which is one thing, but also, now watch what happens when I right-click and I shoot. See how they have the 2 lines that go directly to me? Those are the way of indicating that, hey, we're going to attack you. So those target lines actually are pretty useful, and I do say that they're pretty alright. You can also turn on other people's target lines, but those can get a little bit annoying. You don't really need to know those sorts of things. So back to character configuration. Of course, you have your click filter settings. These are something you really need to figure out for yourself. I'm not going to tell any one person, hey, you should do it this way and things like that. But if you're having target issues in general, this tab is very, very useful to you, both for your display and for your target options. I'll probably do a future video about target options and tricks to only getting the targets that you want a little bit later. Excuse me. Target filter settings, another setting that really affects your displays a lot. While weapon is sheathed, while weapon is drawn, it's very simple for your target filter settings. This is, again, just settings that you really need to only deal with when you, how do I say this? When you're fighting something, really, or when you're not even just targeting. This isn't really so much UI as it is personal preference, so I'm going to skip over this a little bit. Display setting, now there are, again, more display settings here. Auto sheath weapon when not in combat, display headgear, display main and offhand. auto sort items, but again, a lot of this is nothing too major. One thing that is here is battle effect settings, which is technically your display. It's not so much your UI as it is your display, but I just want to go over them real quick because you can limit other people's battle effects so that you can see things a little bit more clearly, but they need to add more battle effect settings because they aren't that influential yet. So again, all of this I just wanted to go over. These are really all control settings, but they do affect you on a display level to some degree. The real thing we want to get into are UI settings. Now, UI settings are very short, but they're very easy and they're very customizable. They do help clean up your UI a little bit. So as you can see here, we have the micro menu and the pause menu. The gamepad pause menu is something that, again, we will go over in another video. But then you have some common UI things here. For example, restore map when not moving. I have it set to no. That means that this map, when I'm moving, let's say that I go still for a while and I don't use this map, and then I start moving. I can set it to either go completely, you know, I can see it completely with the yes, or I can make it so that it just sort of is transparent a little bit while I'm doing that thing. So that's why I could set my map transparency to 26. As you can see, while the map itself is selected, it doesn't make a difference. But if the map is in its transparent mode, when it's sort of in the background in terms of the applications that you're using in the game, then the map transparency can turn. If you just set it to 100, it's the same as setting your restore map when not moving to yes, really. So just a few things that you may want to keep in mind for your map settings. Now, next are the help menus. Now, these come up a lot. Display item help, all right, this makes sense. Display action help, that makes sense too. You scroll over it, gives you the help. Display pop-up help, this I don't really use too much. Pop-up help is a little bit annoying. And display active help windows. Those are the things you get at the beginning of the game that sort of try and teach you the game, and you have to read through them. Once you've learned them, turn that off. Just turn it off. Get rid of it. So just in case you run into something that you forgot to run into before, you don't have to deal with all the ones that you ignored. Now, this is a big one for UI display, is character information, displaying certain things. So all of these are things that are immediately available to you on your screen already. Display flying text. This really needs to be delved into a little bit more. I feel like they need to expand it to display personal flying text versus displaying other people's flying text. I want to see my own flying text, but I don't want to see everybody else's. So I'm sort of at a cross point where I don't know if I want to even see my own anymore, just because I don't think it matters as much as actual mechanics to fights and things like that. I know the damage I do, and I don't need to see flying text of numbers to be confirmed of that. So displaying parameter bars is actually your health, your MP, and your TP. So you pretty much always want to be displaying that unless you're really confident that you're never going to die. Displaying your experience bar. Once you're level 50, if you're not planning to level anything, you can turn it off, but sometimes it is nice to have it on. As you can see here, when I turn it back on, it appears at the bottom right there. I'm level 50, so it's not a big deal, but I do go and I level my crafts and my gatherers and things like that. So it is nice to have displayed most of the time, but there are times when I just want to take it off my screen, so it's one less eyesore to look at. Now is one of those moments. Display enhancement and enfeeblement. You really want to keep this on pretty much all the time. In case you're wondering what that is, and excuse me for all the coughing, it's these right here. For some reason, I tried pointing at those with my finger, by the way. So you have your buffs on this side and your debuffs on this side, roughly. I don't have any debuffs on me, so you can't see it. But you can you can choose to turn that off as well. Don't turn that off. Trust me, you do not want to turn that off. Absolutely not. Display the inventory grid, though. This is sort of useful information. It's this right down here. It's your inventory grid. It shows you if an item is a certain color, it designates what kind of item it is in your inventory. I actually decided to turn that off, but leaving it on is pretty useful. It lets you see how many bag slots you have left, so it's really a matter of personal preference. It doesn't take up a lot of space on your screen realistically, so maybe you could just control home it, make it even smaller if you want to. Display duty list. This is a big one. I really don't like how much space the duty list takes up on my screen, even when it's set to minimal size. If I really want to know that I have to do a duty, I'll go to my journal and I'll check it there. So again, personal preference. I turn it off so it takes up less space. I could even turn off the mini-map if I wanted. That's really stretching it for space, because I like mini-maps in games. So again, personal preference. Display guild. I should probably leave that off. I mean, I actually don't have a lot of money, so it's not that big of a deal. So I'll just leave it on. I like watching myself get poorer every video, so I do like having that there so I can watch it mid-video, watch myself get poorer. Display server info, that's at the top right. Again, it doesn't take up a lot of space. Sorry if I just hit the microphone there. It doesn't take up a lot of space, so I don't really care, and it does tell you when you have mail, so I guess leave it. Display limit gauge. If you're someone who's never going to use the limit break during a fight, I guess it's okay. But I would still do it just so you can see, oh, my party has a limit break ready. You know, I can tell this person to use it. A lot of these are things that people would consider necessary, but a lot of people don't consider necessary. So it's really up to you whether or not you want to turn them on and off. Target. This actually, I say you leave all these on, and I probably shouldn't even be messing with these. Display target information. Tell me this. Is your game better if you can't see this little target menu right here? I don't think anyone's game is better from this. I don't think anyone benefits from this. You can't see target. You can't see the target of target. You can't see the spell that they're casting unless you do focus. But then you can go ahead and you can turn your focus off. So why would you even turn it off? You just wouldn't even use it. I don't get it. That's the inner Jersey of me coming out. I don't get why you would even have a display focus target information on and off when you have to manually turn it on and off for each individual target as it is. If you didn't care, you wouldn't do it anyway. So hey, 1,000 fire shards just sold. Whee! Okay. That was pretty interruptive of the video, but I'm not going to stop anyway. And display enmity list. You definitely don't want to turn that off. Trust me. I mean, don't get me wrong, the party menu itself is more efficient for telling that. But still, I think it's important to leave the display for the enmity list on. It actually makes switching targets a lot easier for at least the PC players who may be having trouble with their targeting options. So I think leave that on. Display name is another thing. This, again, is more of a display option than a UI option. So I recommend you just explore these. These are just the conditions under which people's names are displayed and their HP is displayed. You can really move this around and change it to your own disclosure or your own pleasure or whatnot. Hotbar settings, these very directly affect your display settings because you choose whether or not you show them. So the one question that I get with my hotbars a lot is how do I have the invisible spaces like between them? And that is because of this hide unassigned slots part right up here. As you can see, if I actually unlock them and I start moving things around, they reappear. But wherever but then it creates empty spaces, so it's not too big of a deal. So that's really the only thing that you need to know about this. But of course, if you just moved around a bunch of hotbars in the HUD layout and you want to actually display them, that's what this is for. You can actually have to turn them on to display them. Horizontal and vertical, broken up very well. I do recommend going to your shared hotbars and fixing these though, because a lot of the hotbars by default are set to share other than 1, 2, and 3, I believe. So definitely go here, turn those off, and then start playing around with your hotbars and your UI a little bit. That way you can get it customized for each job in a way that fits you better. That's the only thing I'm thinking about is how this benefits you and fits you more or the most. Cross hotbar is something that you really only have to worry about on the PS3, or if you're a PC player who likes playing with a controller. I prefer this for crafting and gathering at times. I prefer using the controller as opposed to always being hunched over my keyboard because, well, that's how I play. So this I will go over in the PS3 version of the episode. I'm hoping I can get that out in about a week, hopefully less, because I really need to start paying more attention to the PS3 players as well. I know I like to try and talk about game mechanics that are general to both PC and PS3, but I think giving the PS3 players some direct attention in some of my videos is definitely a must, and I have the tools to do it, so I need to man up and just do it, bottom line. And the last thing you really have is the log window. This is another UI display thing. As you can see with the chat box, you can actually shrink it in size down to, I don't know, who the heck. I would love to see somebody who plays the game like this. Maybe, I don't know, Gil Seller does that so they can't see their own tells that much. But you can do things like add timestamps to your messages, and you can play sounds upon receiving things. You can enable lip sync so that when you actually talk, your lips move and things like that. You can change the name display settings and the font size, which, you know, I've gone over a little bit. So really, it's about finding out what works best for you. And you're probably going to spend the most time playing around in these HUD layouts. It's really, the world is your oyster here. I mean, like, just being able to shrink my party list down to that size really does open up a lot of space for me. And if you're wondering why this hotbar is so big, it's for a video I never released, so don't worry too much about that. I can move my enemy list up here, and it just frees up so much space to be able to shrink or enlarge things. For example, like, my eyes are bad, so I have the chat box as a relatively big font, but I have my hotbars and everything at a relatively, I have them on the small settings, except for 2 of them, which I should probably change. But for now, I like my UI the way it is. as I said, if you really want to, you can move the inventory grid. Although these action help things get in the way, and they're really annoying when you're trying to edit things. See, there's the inventory grid. I can move it down right here. Bam. Just move Gil like that. Let's try using this to see if I can line them up. Watch. See? Line up. Oh, whoops, I'm using the wrong key. There we go. Come on. There we go. And nope, not you. I don't want you. Yeah, look at that. Nice and lined up. That's what I like. Although I don't like that. There we go. I can fix that. So, play around with it a little bit. Use the control home and the control drag options, as I've just shown you, to really play around with your UI and make it the way you want it to be. And I promise I'll have that PS3 episode coming out soon enough. But anyway, guys, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like, favorite, and subscribe for more Final Fantasy XIV information. Also, be sure to follow me on Facebook and Twitter so you can ask me questions, especially if you have questions about this video in particular, because I know that the UI, there may be specific things that you're wondering if you can do or not. Be sure to follow me on Facebook and Twitter so you can ask me about these things. But anyway, guys, hope you enjoyed this video, and until next time, take care.